Second round of the 2025 MotoGP World Championship as the world's fastest riders get set to tackle Termas, the Rio Hondo, for the first time in 2 years. Known for its hot springs, it's time for hot laps in the sprint as Marc Marquez fires away from a sixth pole in Termas, the Rio Hondo. It's time for MotoGP. So MotoGP arrives in Termas Rio Hondo for the 9th time, the 19th Argentinian Grand Prix in history. First one was all the way back in 1961 in Buenos Aires, the first Grand Prix ever to take place outside of Europe, believe it or not. 14 turns, 5 left, 9 of them right, featuring a long back straight over 1,000 metres, heavy braking into that turn 5. Turn 2, a few riders have been caught out there this weekend on the left-hand side of the tyre. Tyre management crucial through turn 6 and 7, the long radius left-handers. And then there's always drama in that final sector. The braking zone in at 13 and 14. The most demanding braking points into 1, 5 and 7 here in Termas. This was 3 years ago now. Aleix Espargaro into turn 5 and Jorge Martin on his way to Aprilia's first MotoGP success. So 2025 got underway 2 weeks ago at the Chang International Circuit in Bahrain, and it was a dream start in red for Marc Marquez, having already taken success in the sprint. He followed it up with the perfect double. It wasn't without his dramas though in the main Grand Prix on Sunday, as he encountered some front tyre pressure issues which saw him briefly drop behind brother Alex, and then in the last 3 laps it was hammer down time from the 93 as he opened his account in 2025 with the pole, sprint and Grand Prix treble. And so far so good as we move from Southeast Asia to South America for Marc Marquez. He won the opening Grand Prix for the first time in 11 years. Last time Marquez won our round 1 was back in 2014, and this morning he was dominant in qualifying here in Termas, the Rio Hondo. First time since 2014, he's qualified on pole position in the first 2 Grand Prix. The one and only rider in Grand Prix history here in Argentina, or at Termas, the Rio Hondo, to lap in the 1:36. Some lap it was for Marquez to take his 68th MotoGP pole position, a 1:36.917. Massive, overwhelming favourite he is going into the 12-lap sprint, which will be lights out in just over 25 minutes time. Once again, well, Bahrain was all about one rider and one family, and it's been the same story here in Termas so far, as Marc Marquez leads a grid, second place, Alex Marquez, just as he was 2 weeks ago in Thailand. But potentially a candidate for the star of Sprint Saturday so far, Johann Zarco, Castrol Honda LCR rider on the front row of the grid. His first front row since Valencia 2023. Only the 3rd time Zarco, the 34-year-old Frenchman, has qualified top 10 for Honda. Best ever for him on a HRC machine. 7th in Mandalika was his previous best. The first Honda front row in 36 Grand Prix. Light at the end of the tunnel for HRC. Their first front row start since Marc Marquez was on the front row in Mugello all the way back in 2023. So with the eyes on the action, we have our feathered friends here in Argentina. It's eyes on whether Marc Marquez can continue this astonishing start to life as a factory Ducati rider. As we just mentioned, he completed the treble in Thailand, and now he's going for a repeat treble here in Termas, the Rio Hondo. Matt Burtley is going to be in the commentary box. Jack Appleyard down in pit lane. These are live pictures from northern Argentina. We're about 1,000 kilometers north of Buenos Aires. It has been cool and cloudy throughout this weekend. A few rain spots as well falling in the earlier Moto3 qualifying. It looks like we are going to get a dry 12-lap sprint. But once again, Lewis, this feels like Bahrain all over again. It's Marquez versus Marquez at the top.
Yeah, as we get ready for the sprint, it's a case of catch me if you can. If you are the Marquez brothers, certainly Marc Marquez will be asking that question of his younger brother Alex. The first sub 137 lap of this Termas Rio Hondo circuit on a MotoGP bike for Marc Marquez in qualifying qualifying earlier on this morning. Took pole by a quarter of a second from his younger brother, BK8 Corsini Racing. Alex Marquez, many respects the star of the show on that front row of the grid, is the rider in third. Johann Zarco for the Castrol Honda LCR squad in third place, the sole non-Ducati in the top four, and eyeing up a giant-killing performance in the sprint today.
Yeah, he's talked about his podium prospects all weekend. I bumped into Lucio Cecchinello, LCR Honda boss, in the lunch break here. And it wasn't just the one-lap speed that's been eye-catching from Zarco. He has, they believe, got the potential to fight for the top three in both the sprint and Grand Prix here in Argentina tomorrow. What a performance that would be. No stranger to the Parc Fermé here, though, in Termas. Zarco, the most experienced rider on our MotoGP grid in 2025. Twice on the podium in MotoGP, twice a Moto2 race winner here in Termas Rio Hondo. He really has stole the show, hasn't he, on Sprint Saturday, Lewis? So 137.205 in qualifying on the front row, splitting the Marquez brothers and former world champion Pecco Bagnaia. What a ride.
Outstanding, what a rider. He's always gone well around this Termas Rio Hondo circuit. He was a double winner here in both of his Moto2 championship winning seasons. But this is more than just a rider going well at a low grip circuit, because you'd imagine if that were the case, he would gradually drop back as the rubber went down and the grip levels improved through the weekend. That has not happened. He has remained very much a thorn in the side of the Marquez brothers as Marc walks into his factory Ducati box ready to take a second consecutive pole position. First time he's done that since his glory year of 2019, when he took a couple of consecutive poles during the summer. He goes into this 12-lap sprint as the overwhelming favourite. Can anybody leave something on the championship leader? They'll have to do it at the start if they're going to beat him, you feel.
Yeah, as you mentioned, back-to-back poles to kick off a new season for the first time in 11 long years, and he just is the epitome of cool, calm and collected right now. So relaxed, he's almost horizontal, Marc Marquez. Throughout this weekend, he just looks at one with that Ducati GP25. No mistakes, everything looking effortless, isn't it? Marc, you are the best. Well, it's hard to sort of argue with that banner, isn't it? Marquez fans out in force in this part of South America. It has been lively, to say the least, in downtown Termas. And the Marquez family carrying a lot of support here in Argentina. So that's your front row: Marc Marquez, Alex Marquez and Johann Zarco leading the second row of the grid. Under pressure, Pecco Bagnaia, fourth fastest on the factory Ducati, but rather worryingly, once again, 3.5 tenths of a second he was behind his teammate Marc Marquez at the end of that Q2 this morning, and once again playing catch-up, Lewis.
It reminds me of the unseen footage that we saw on MotoGP.com post the Thai Grand Prix, where Pecco Bagnaia was being consoled and almost being talked into being happy about a third place finish by his superiors at Ducati, saying that, hey, remember last year, third place is absolutely fine. I don't think it's the position that's the problem from Pecco Bagnaia's point of view. His concern will be the deficit, the time deficit that he appears to be suffering from to Marc Marquez. The gap between the two really flattered Pecco, you feel, in Buriram, of course, because Marc was sitting behind Alex for a lot of the race and managing his tyre pressure parameters. This time, though, for Pecco Bagnaia to be 3.5 tenths away from his teammate, it's too much. He knows that, and he will aim to close that as we go to the weekend. The fact that he was so far behind in terms of time allowed not just Alex Marquez, but Johann Zarco to split the Ducati teammates and relegate him down to row 2.
First time off the front row since the Australian Grand Prix in Phillip Island. The Italian rider, speaking of Italians, fast on Ducatis, well, Fabio Di Giannantonio has had an excellent weekend so far. He was second quickest in the Friday action, finding himself 6th place on the grid, a 137.286. First time Digi's qualifying the top 6 since Assen, the Dutch TT, at the end of June last year, working his way back to full fitness. And our most recent Grand Prix winner here in Termas Rio Hondo, Forza Bez, is the message from some Aprilia Stars fans out here in Argentina. 9th on the grid in Buriram, 9th on the grid today here in Termas for Marco Bezzecchi. Won his first ever Grand Prix here back in the Moto2 era, Moto3 era rather, in 2018, and the first of his 3 successes in MotoGP were right here in 2023.
Frankie Morbidelli's had an eventful day so far, having had to go through qualifying 1 after missing out on the top 10 yesterday afternoon in practice. Had a crash in practice, free practice 2 this morning, which made a real mess of his VR46 Ducati, which left him with just 1 bike to use in qualifying. Not that held him back in the end, he still came through qualifying one, set what was at that time the second fastest lap of the entire Grand Prix weekend so far to book his place in the battle for pole position. Went on to qualify in the middle of row 3. Morbidelli, who went well here the last time MotoGP raced here. A pair of fourth places on board the Yamaha. Will be expecting to close in on that podium battle, this time on board a Ducati.
Leading the KTM charge once again. We're getting used to saying this, aren't we? Pedro Acosta, the 20-year-old Spaniard. He starts 5th place on the grid. That's his best starting position since he was on pole position, of course, on our flyaway sequence at the back end of last year at the Twin Ring Motegi in Japan. A 137.274. Got Acosta onto row 2 in 5th spot. Here he is, right on cue, the Shark, ready to cut his teeth here in Termas de Rio Hondo. And he is with his crew chief, Paul Trevathan. Just getting some last-minute instructions here. Pedro Acosta, 6th place he was in the sprint in Bahrain, a frustrating experience in the main Grand Prix. So he finished at 19th after an early crash. KTM racing fans, well, everybody seems to have their pockets of fans here in Termas de Rio Hondo. Leading the Yamaha Challenge, well, that is Fabio Quartararo, 2021 MotoGP World Champion. He was 7th fastest at the end of this morning's Q2 session. Let's go El Diablo, that's the message from the French fans here in Argentina. Now, we mentioned, didn't there, was a few spots of rain that started to fall early afternoon when the Moto3 riders were out for their Q1 and Q2 sessions. It is still very grey and overcast, which has been the weather story of our entire week so far here in Argentina. Let's get an update and say good afternoon for the first time from Jack Appleyard down in pit lane.
Yeah, good afternoon to everybody. As you say, the rain just started to affect the start of Moto3 Q1 and then has eased off, but I'm down here on the grid and you can still feel it in the air. As you say, incredibly overcast, incredibly grey. A couple of the teams I spoke to said that their weather radars are not indicating that there should be any rain coming their way, but I mean, we've been in this position before. Of course, the last time we raced it was wet. 2022 when we were here, we had wet weather throughout the weekend as well, so you wouldn't be surprised if out of nowhere the rain does arrive, because you can just sense it, but at the moment it is dry.
Thanks ever so much for that, Jack. Maybe a bit of intervention from the skies, maybe the only thing that can stop Marc Marquez from romping to back-to-back sprint victories here in Termas. As we get a look inside the other side of the Red Bull KTM Factory Racing Garage, Brad Binder, 11th fastest right at the back end of that Q2 session, having looked pretty strong in time attack mode on Friday afternoon when he was 5th fastest. Binder, of course, the winner of our last sprint here in Argentina in 2023, from 15th on the grid. What a ride that was by the South African rider. And the winning margin over Marco Bezzecchi in that sprint here from 2023 of just over 700ths of a second. It remains our closest ever sprint so far. Let's hope we get another one as dramatic as what we had here 2 years ago.
I certainly hope so, because the final sector here is geared beautifully for a bit of a last lap, last corner lunge. The long winding turn 12 into the hairpin of 13 before the left of 14, which is followed immediately by the finish line. Here's Ayagura, who hasn't quite scaled the same heights as Bahrain a couple of weeks ago. Not that he expected to do that anyway. 15th on the grid is by no means a disgrace for the Moto2 world champion. Only missed out by around about 1/10 of a second on getting through to qualifying 2 in Q1 this morning. He does out-qualify his teammate Raul Fernandez, who's been having a tough weekend. That's 2-0 to Agura in terms of qualifying, but he's going to have to come from the 5th row if he's to produce some more sprint heroics.
Yeah, he wasn't helped this morning in Q1 by a crash at turn 2. A crash which happened to his fellow rookie as well, Somkiat Chantra. Chantra down in 19th place on the grid, out-qualifying. Well, Maverick Vinales and Enea Bastianini at Red Bull KTM Tech 3 are having an absolute horror show, a nightmare down here in Termas 3 Honda. Vinales goes from 20th, Bastianini 21st, both of them looking completely lost. A bit of a brick wall they've hit on that RC16, as we saw Jack Miller getting suited and booted. Bit of work to do for Jack if he's to be the lead Yamaha once again here this weekend in Termas. 13th on the grid for the Australian. His best time on 1:37.604, which actually was faster than both Brad Binder and Alex Rins went in the second qualifying session.
It was a super competitive qualifying session earlier on today from John Zarco in third. In fact, going further forward than that, Alex Marquez in second, back to Frankie Morbidelli, middle of the third row, just a couple of tenths of a second, covered the lot of them. There is no margin for any sort of error when we get down to those crucial final laps of qualifying. And Pekka Bagnaia, I guess, will know that as well as anyone, missing out on a place on the front row of the grid. Wonderful crowd here at Termas Hondo. Those grandstands on the outside of turn one, the one on the far left, just this being out of shot, is the official Marc Marquez grandstand for this weekend's Grand Prix. Boy, are they coming into this sprint with high hopes of seeing their man victorious again. Marc Marquez, over the years coming into Termas Hondo, this is his 7th visit to this circuit, and it is now his 6th pole position across those 7 visits. The only time he was beaten to pole position here at Termas was that dramatic 2018 qualifying session when Jack Miller walked on water on his way to pole position. That gives you an idea of the challenge facing everybody else today to beat Marc Marquez. He loves this Termas Hondo circuit.
It was a cruise in the sprint in Burram for Marquez. He led from start to finish. Nobody was able to lay a glove on the 32-year-old Spaniard. What can Pekka Bagnaia do? What can Alex Marquez do as the brothers start side by side on the front row of the grid for the 2nd time already in 2025? What a day it was. What a weekend it was for the Marquez family in Burram. The first time in our proud long history, 76 years, the first time 2 brothers were 1st and 2nd in a Premier Class Grand Prix. Something for all the Marquez connections, family and friends to be immensely proud of. Could get even better, couldn't it? We could see another double 1-2 from the Marquez boys here in South America, as they seem to have had a clear edge over the chasing pack so far this weekend.
Yeah, it's up to the likes of John Zarco, Pekka Bagnaia, Pedro Acosta potentially on the KTM to do something about that. The start of the first half lap is going to be absolutely crucial, as it so often is in MotoGP, even in these shorter sprints, because of course once they get through turns 1, 2 and 3, there is a long 1.1 kilometre blast down to the tight hairpin of turn number 5, when they're down from over 200 miles an hour, over 330 clicks, down to 75 kilometres an hour for turn number 5. And the rider I think who will be mindful of that most is Johan Zarco on the front row of the grid in 3rd. We've seen throughout the weekend, and we've seen it really from the moment this season began, that Honda does have a straight line speed deficit relative to the rest of the field, in particular to those Ducatis. Zarco will be mindful of that and will, I guess, be careful and be aware of not getting exposed and getting overtaken down that back straight.
Yeah, he's been super strong in Sector 4 all weekend as Zarco. He sort of threatened this kind of performance right from the get-go yesterday morning when he was 2nd fastest in FP1. He was 3rd in both sessions he's participated in today, 3rd quickest in FP2 this morning. So it's not really something of a shock, is it, to see Zarco on that front row for the first time in 22 Grand Prix. As Marc Marquez then comes to what is very familiar territory here in Termas Hondo, his 6th pole position, the 68th of his Premier Class career, 96 maybe his entire Grand Prix career. Won't be too long, will it, before we see him break the century of pole positions, surely. Can anybody stop him in the sprint in Burram? Well, he never saw anybody else's rear tyre once he dropped the clutch on that factory Ducati GP25. The 37 maximum point haul collected in Thailand, and already trying to seize complete control early on of this year's MotoGP World Championship.
He has an 8-point lead over his younger brother Alex at this stage. Of course, Alex Marquez has won sprints in the past, 2 of them back in 2023. Of course, tomorrow he'll look to add a first Grand Prix win to that. And I guess if you're a fan of the Marquez family, you're pretty well catered for in 2025 at this stage. 1-2 on the grid in Burram, 1-2 in the sprint and in the Grand Prix, and now 1-2 on the grid for this 2nd sprint of the season in Argentina. Just how bold will Alex choose to be, given the opportunity to have a go at his older brother?
Yeah, no respite for the field either, is there, as we go to the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas next time around, where Marc Marquez usually rocks up and wins for fun. So, Marc Marquez on pole for the 2nd time in 2 Grand Prix for the factory Ducati team. Let's not discount Bagnaia. We know that he can be strong coming from the 2nd row in 4th place. Let's get some pre-sprint thoughts from their boss, Davide Tardozzi, who's with Jack down on the grid.
Yeah, down here with Davide ahead of a big sprint here. In fact, he's just having a quick word with Gigi Dell'Igna. In fact, come back to us in a second, guys, because Gigi's just having to have a quiet word with Davide. Hopefully should have him in about 20 seconds.
No problem, Jack, just let us know and we'll zip straight back down to you. Bagnaia then has just left the grid just to gather his thoughts, collect his thoughts before this 12-lap sprint with Marquez on pole.
Yeah, here is your front row. There was your front row with the Marquez brothers leading Johan Zarco. Here we go again. Marquez, Zarco, all going for that soft rear tyre, as I'm sure we would have expected going in. Bagnaia, Acosta and Gian Antonio is your second row of the grid. Quartararo, Morbidelli and Marco Bezzecchi, top Aprilia, back of row 3. On row 4, we find the second of the Hondas. That's Joan Mir in 10th. Brad Binder and Alex Rins complete the 4th row. And while you look through the rest of the grid with Jack Miller on row 5, let's rejoin Jack and Davide Tardozzi.
Yeah, good to have Davide with me. Just firstly, everything okay? I saw you having the quick word with GG there.
Yeah, talking about the weather, because you know these kind of clouds, we don't know Argentina, so it's difficult to decide they have the second bike on wet or dry set.
Yeah, we can feel just very, very small raindrops now as we speak. Let's touch on both riders. Firstly, Mark, I imagine supremely confident. And what's Pecco going to be able to do here from the second row?
I think that if he can have a good start and chase Mark and also Alex will be fast, I think that he could be there to play for the podium.
Thanks, Davide.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Ducati boss Davide Tardozzi. Yeah, Bagnaia's not only got his hands full trying to work out the very complex challenge of beating Marc Marquez. At the moment, he's playing third best, isn't he, as well, to the Alex Marquez, who has just taken to that GP24 like a duck to water. The switch from that troublesome GP23 he was riding last year, it really has galvanised Alex Marquez. Proof in the results, he took one podium in the whole of 2024, a tally he was able to double in round 1 back in Thailand just a couple of weeks ago.
It's Pecco Bagnaia, who very calmly walks off the grid. He'll be just going for a quiet moment, I guess, on his own down in pit lane before returning to the grid. The sprint gets underway in 8 minutes time. And Pecco Bagnaia surely has to go on the attack from that 4th place on the grid. He can't afford to give up too many points, even at this early stage of the season. Surely Bagnaia knows that it is essential that he keeps the points margin between himself and Marc Marquez to an absolute minimum. Joan Mir sits at the front of the 4th row of the grid. Made his way successfully through qualifying 1 earlier on today, a session that he felt, by his right, he really shouldn't have been in the first place, but he very quickly put that right this morning.
Marc Marquez then coming to the grid, starting from pole position. Big favourite, isn't he, in advance of this Termas Treo Hondo sprint. 12 laps coming your way in what, just under or just over 8 minutes time.
Okay, guys, now we start the 5 minutes and 3 minutes procedure. As you know, as usual, at the 3 minutes, only 3 mechanics around the rider. So be ready and come on. Okay.
So some more exclusive live team radio there. Aprilia boss Paolo Bonora on the grid with Marco Bezzecchi, 9th fastest in Q2 this morning. The master plan, of course, is for Aprilia to get themselves quickly into the fight for the podium places here. There is Bez. Opened his account with Aprilia with 2 9th places on the grid. Very happy and confident with the feeling he gets from the front end of that RSGP. Not so in particular around this Termas Treo Hondo circuit with the instability from the rear, which I have to say is not an exclusive issue for the Italian rider. We've seen so many riders, in particular over the bumpy, hard acceleration point through the 4th gear, turn 11. You can just see the bikes bucking and weaving there as they clip the big bump shortly after they picked up the throttle.
Marco Bezzecchi, our last winner, of course, here in Argentina back in 2023. Very different conditions, of course, to this. His victory here came in wet conditions. Maybe he'll be looking up at the skies, wondering if any rain is going to drop on our heads just to spice things up. This is a rider who certainly wouldn't complain, I guess, if we had a bit of rain. Brad Binder coming from 11th on the grid. I guess, in theory, it should be much easier for him than it was a couple of years ago when he won from 15th, but there is a very different challenge awaiting him if he does make his way to the front of this field. KTM more competitive, I think that is fair to say, than they were in Thailand, but still a long way to go for Brad Binder to be back where he wants to be.
Yeah, some geometry tricks this weekend from the KTM squad have given Binder and Acosta a lot more confidence, a lot more feeling and feedback through the front tyre of that RC16. Confidence which hasn't transferred over to the KTM Tech 3 squad, who, as we mentioned, are having an absolutely miserable time here in Argentina. Maverick Vinales, what, 9/10 of a second off pole position, and Enea Bastianini a full second. Just nowhere near the A game, are they, at the moment? Two proven MotoGP race winners who are having a tough time at the moment. Saw Maverick Vinales sort of shuffling through the paddock here on today and looked very glum indeed. Not too much to smile about for this French squad at the moment.
So Marc Marquez then pulls down the crash helmet. Shortly the visor will go down and he will focus on the job at hand. And so far, every job that he's turned his mind to, he's passed it with flying colours. Pole positions, 2 out of 2. Sprint win. He's going for 2 out of 2 this afternoon to add to the Grand Prix victory he picked up in Thailand. Fabio Quartararo just getting himself into the zone. 7th on the grid for him. It's been a weekend which, I guess, from a Yamaha point of view, has gone slightly better than they feared. They had fears coming here, certainly Quartararo did after the Sunday in Thailand. Given the low grip nature of the circuit, he thought he might be in for a little bit of a struggle here. Didn't exactly enjoy the first session on Friday, but matters have improved somewhat as the weekend has gone on for Yamaha. A double Q2 appearance for their factory squad. Quartararo is 7th, Alex Rins a row further back in 12th.
Heading the second row of the grid then, Ducati Lenovo team rider Pecco Bagnaia, who's had his problems so far this weekend. In Termas through Honda, 16th he was yesterday morning, and a long way back, 1.3 seconds back of Marquez. He got into Q2 by the skin of his teeth, despite a crash at turn 2 yesterday. Hasn't been in the top 3 in any session so far this weekend, and he's got it all on to try and race the Marquez brothers, a task which he ultimately came up short on last time out in Thailand. 3-minute board up then at the front of the grid as the BMW safety car peels away. Let's hope we get a full dry 12-lap sprint coming your way here in Argentina. Safety car goes into the first corner. You can see there on the inboard camera the Marc Marquez grandstand on the outside of turn 1. That's jam-packed to the rafters now as they hope to see their hero get the sprint victory sealed here in Termas.
It is worth pointing out, flag-to-flag rules do still apply in the sprint, but unless it absolutely buckets down, no one is likely to change.
So Honda's first front row in 36 Grand Prix. That's gone the way of the impressive Frenchman Johan Zarco. His first front row start on a Honda. Alex Marquez, 2nd on the grid in Thailand, 2nd on the grid here in Termas. Can he get revenge on his brother Marc in this 12-lap sprint? But it's Marc Marquez looking terrific in Termas as he goes for the sprint victory from pole position.